Welcome to our program Called to Serve. This week we have one of the young seminarians who's beginning his studies with the Diocese of Baton Rouge. We're joined by Caleb Gilcrease. He's going to tell us his story and how growing up he became clear to him that he was called to serve. Welcome to Called to Serve. It's always exciting when we have our young seminarians with us. They bring so much energy and enthusiasm to our program. Today we're joined by one of the young seminarians who's really just beginning his time of formation with the Diocese of Baton Rouge. I'd like you to please welcome our seminarian, Caleb Gilcrease. Welcome, Caleb.
Well, thank you.
As we always ask when people come onto our show, we want to really hear the story of how God got you to a place where you really began to hear the call and became convinced that you had a place serving Him in the church. So why don't you tell us how God has brought you to this place in your life?
Okay, well, I guess the moment that I realized that I really wanted to go to seminary was the March for Life, my senior year of high school. But I guess before that, several weeks before that, was kind of a conversion for me. Going through high school, I never really practiced my faith. I just, went to mass at school when they offered it, and it was, I guess, not, the first thing that came to mind that was important to me. And my senior retreat in high school was really the moment that I realized that, that religion isn't something just for old people, and that I saw for the first time young people that were close to my age, college-age kids, and they were on fire. They loved their faith, and they were very excited about it. And I said to myself, I need to find this. I want this. And actually, several weeks later was the March for Life, and so I went on the trip, and that was really the first time I ever thought about the priesthood and the possibility of me following that path. And what it was for me was seeing all the priests and the brothers and sisters religious, and just how happy they were, filled with joy, and they loved what they did, and so I kind of asked myself, so there's got to be something to this. There's just something intriguing to it, for me, and so I got home and started kind of doing some research on it, and realized that, okay, well, the next step I think is to go talk to the vocation board about it, the vocational director, and so that was really how I got started.
It's interesting in your story. We've spoken with several seminarians, and many of them have similar episodes in their lives, the Steubenville retreats, school retreats, the witness of other young people who love God, and seeing that, as you said, there are young people who seem to be in love with Jesus. And, I thought that this just little old ladies who go to Mass every day, that they're the only ones who really love Jesus that much. And to really see that kind of faith in the lives of other young people, what a great effect that has. What a wonderful opportunity. What was it during that retreat that made you think that these young people loved Jesus?
They were just very excited, and they were church going. They always went to Mass, and just during the retreat, they were all friends of my religion teacher at the time, and he was a young man as well that was practicing Catholic and very excited about his faith, and so I guess for the first time seeing more than just one, seeing that there were more than just a handful of these these young people that were very excited, and they were very lively, and throughout the retreat they gave talks and explained that this is the most serious thing in your life is to build a relationship with God. And I don't know, I guess maybe for me it took it took meeting someone that was close to me in that regard for me to move in that direction.
You know, I can't overemphasize, especially to those who are watching today, the importance of community for young people. It's so easy for a young person to think, I'm the only one who feels this way. Or if I went to church, I'd be the only young person there. And if they find community, if they belong to a youth group, if they go on retreats, if they see other young people and realize they're not alone, that sense of community, I'm not the only one doing this, what a great effect that has on them.
Mm.
Well, then you went from kind of a quiet place of solitude to a place of social activism. You went on the March for Life, and this is much noisier than a retreat, but once again is showing young people who are really on fire and who are really engaged in living their faith in a certain way. What did you see there? You said you saw some happy priests, religious. What did you see in this crowd that stirred your heart so much?
Again, it was while on the bus ride up there, we got to meet several seminarians that were on our bus, and so that was very exciting because for the first time, you know, I was meeting a seminarian, you know, someone that was training, you know, for the priesthood, and it's funny because now he's one of my diocesan brothers, but so I guess spending time and talking with him, you know, him discussing his journey through discernment with me, and then actually, I guess with all the places we went to, you know, we went to many different churches and the basilica, and I guess kind of taking part and seeing what happened in those places, you know, the mass, and you could just see, you know, you could see the joy in all the priests, and I don't know, they just seemed so happy, you know, doing what they were doing and celebrating the mass, and you could tell it was definitely the most important, you know, part of their lives. And hearing them talk, and they were so passionate about, you know, the reasons why we were there, and I don't know, it was very striking to me. I was just very excited, and I don't know, I guess I didn't really know what it was. It was a mystery, and you know, I wanted to grasp that, and so that's when I started discerning, I guess.
Good. I know that some of those who watch this program are themselves priests and teachers, and once again, the importance of seeing happy priests, seeing teachers who are living their faith and who are enthusiastic about their faith. These are such important roles for them to play, because obviously if the only example that you have is someone who's unhappy or someone who's clearly not a good example of what our faith should be, you know, how many vocations might be lost if that's the only example that young people have. Now, I noticed that you pretty much started when you were in high school. So I want to ask you a little bit as we go backwards. Growing up, what was your faith life like? Was your family a practicing family in terms of your faith? Were you weekly mass attendants? What was your experience as a young person before you got to high school with the church?
Okay, well, I've always attended Catholic school throughout, you know, my education, elementary school, middle school, and so I don't know, I was always kind of interested in it, but as a family, we didn't practice very much, and it seemed that, you know, we would only go to the midnight mass or, you know, Easter Sunday. But even still, you know, my mother, she would always pray her rosary. But there were, I think, just some things that she didn't agree with the church on back at that time. And so, I don't know, I guess I didn't really have much of an example in that regard to follow. But I did have some really great teachers in my younger days, and actually there was a seminarian that taught me when I was in 4th grade, and he was close to ordination, so that kind of comes up in my mind right now as we're, you know, talking about this, and several teachers that had discerned out of seminary and were great teachers, And so, I don't know, I was kind of very interested in it, but not practicing, and which I think, I think God was kind of, inching me more towards the right direction through that. Maybe it just wasn't the right time yet. But I don't know, I remember I would get in arguments with my mother about this. She wanted to attend a Protestant church, and while I wasn't practicing Catholic, I still said, I don't know, Mom, we're Catholic, we should be just going to Catholic Mass. But yeah, so I don't know, I guess it was kind of just a later conversion. As a child, we weren't really practicing, but.
Well, it's really a message of hope,
Mm-hmm.
from what I see, because there are a lot of young people today who are not in particularly religious families.
Mm-hmm.
They might have their own personal devotion, they might have their own personal interest in the life of the church, but unfortunately, in this day and age, not a lot of families necessarily will set that really good example,
Mm-hmm.
and really bring that devotional life into the home the way that maybe would have been true generations ago. And so I think that your story can be a real sign of hope for, say, grandparents who are watching and know that their grandchildren aren't really being raised in the church the way that they would hope, or even young people who would say, I don't really feel that connected to the church because I've not been practicing that much, but I know there's something there. There's something in me that might be calling me, as happened to you, to something deeper, that they're waiting to be awakened in them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's exciting because you really do give some good example for that.
Yeah.
So we're almost at our halfway point here. So we're gonna pause for a moment and share with you a few messages, and then we'll come back with Caleb, and he's going to continue telling us a little bit about his story, how he was called to serve.
One of the least noticed works of art here in the cathedral are our magnificent mosaic Stations of the Cross. That's probably because they're between our magnificent stained glass windows. You notice the windows because they're all lit up, and the stations are not quite as bright. But they are exquisite. Notice that they're mosaics made up of thousands of pieces of tile and precious stone. They were put in the 1920s. They were fashioned in Germany. This particular station is the first station. You can see Pontius Pilate and a Roman soldier flanking Jesus, who was being condemned to death. Especially in Lent, the Stations of the Cross inspire so many people to be resolute in following Christ, and even taking up their own personal crosses to follow Him. Here at the cathedral, as in any Catholic church, we invite you to encounter Christ, to become more closely related to Him in prayer. Visit the cathedral, the mother church of the Diocese of Baton Rouge, and you'll be greatly spiritually rewarded.
Watch our programming on demand anytime at CatholicLifeTV.org.
Welcome back to our program Called to Serve. We're listening to the testimony of Caleb Gilcrease, who's telling us a little bit about his entering into the seminary and starting that vocation discernment. Well, you got as far as you got to the March for Life, and you said, I might need to talk to somebody in the vocations office. So you began the somewhat arduous process of applying and going through some of the discernment process. Explain a little bit about how that process helped you to discern, and maybe some of the obstacles that you faced during this time of formation.
Okay. I was at LSU for the first semester after graduating high school, and it was funny. I kept hearing the name of the vocational director, and one of my friends that was also discerning gave me his business card and said, "This is the man you need to talk to." And I said, "Yeah, I'll get around to that." And one night I was at Mass over at LSU, and just so happened he was the priest that was celebrating Mass, and so to me that was a clear sign. I need to go talk to him now, and so I did, and scheduled a meeting with him, and we kind of just started going down that road. He asked me to tell him about myself and just kind of my story, and asked me about March for Life and things like that, and there's a lot of paperwork throughout the process, and I think throughout the process I did kind of at times think, am I really called to this, or am I called to marriage? And so that was kind of a struggle, but it seemed as I got closer to entering into seminary, I really became more comfortable and more at peace with the decision, and I don't know, that was good for me. It felt right, at that time, and I'm glad I stayed with it, and I really have enjoyed my time so far. So.
Okay, you begin this process, but your friends and family, I can't imagine, expected this to happen. What kind of response did you get? Were people shocked? Did anybody try to discourage you? I mean, how did this work out for you?
It's interesting. My mother, of course, I'm an only child, so she was very taken by surprise, and told me, I don't know, I think you should think about this more, and it's interesting because she was Catholic, and at the time my father, who is now in RCIA, he wasn't at that point in his life yet, and he's Methodist, and he was very excited for me, like right from the start. He was, he said, well, I think that's it's important what you're doing, and I'm going to support you, and so it was kind of coming from Mom. I was more scared that my dad would be mad, but it was my mom, and all my friends, I don't think they were really shocked that I made the decision. I think some of them thought it was funny, and some of them thought it would be cool to have a friend that would be a seminarian or someday be a priest. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know, it was interesting though. I kind of got mixed messages from all over, but as time has gone, it seems like everybody's getting more excited about it. My mother, she's in love with the idea now. She loves it, and my dad, he's still very excited, and called me up one day at the seminary and told me he was going to RCIA, and so it's very exciting. Looking at that my decision to enter, God may have used that to affect other people's lives and to bring them closer. So
Excellent. Well, I think that's one of the big things even that you spoke about, that once you see other people living their faith, making difficult decisions for their faith, putting their faith into action, you start saying, I really need to do that. Maybe that's something that's for me. Mm-hmm. And so just like others were an example for you, you're beginning now to be in that same process. Were there any doubts in your mind as you were going along? I mean, were there any aspects of the priesthood that really seemed very daunting to you?
I don't know. Of course, I struggled with the idea of, priesthood or marriage and family. Mm-hmm. So that was, really the main, I guess, kind of struggle. Thinking about, well, I want to be a priest, but, I may have to give up. In order to do that, I would have to give up, having children and a wife and raising a family. But I don't know. It was one of those situations where I wanted to have both, but I understood I couldn't, and so that was also a struggle for me to trust, to just trust in divine providence that He would lead me where He wanted me, and I would always pray and I would ask, please, Lord, just tell me what you want me to do, because I want to do it. I know I'll be happy if I follow whatever my vocation is. And so that was just, I think the struggle was, was I have to totally, totally give myself to God and do what He wills. And it seemed like, the doors were opened for me to go to seminary, and I was feeling called, and still feeling called, and so that's the road that I want to head down right now, and later on, if God calls me whichever way, I'll be happy to follow. But I felt like the seminary was the next step to finding my vocation.
Now, I know in the beginning, a lot of the question for seminarians is academics. Did you find so far that the academics, are you able to study the philosophy and find that that's something that you're able to do fairly easily, or?
Well, I haven't taken any philosophy classes yet. I'm just a freshman, but I did worry about academics when I first moved to the seminary, and I had previous experience from LSU, but I was only there for one semester, and so I really worried about academics at seminary because it seemed that I'd always heard that academics are pretty, it's a prestigious thing, and it's tough over there. It's not easy, and so I was going through that in the back of my mind, and I was kind of worried about that, but as usual, it seemed that God kind of carried me through it. Now I've finished one semester, and it wasn't so bad. My grades are, they're good. So it's sometimes I find myself dreading the future papers. I have a lot of friends that they talk about they have loads of papers, but but I don't know. It's very exciting though, getting to study and learn, because I don't know. I just learned so much about myself. I know this past semester I've learned so much about myself, and learning just about brotherhood. I'm an only child, and so to be living with close to 120 other brothers, that's it's been a good experience. And that, as also in academics, compared to being at a secular college where you may only have a handful of friends that are enrolled there. At the seminary, everybody's in your corner, and they're all lending a hand, and they want to see you do good. And so that makes it a little easier for you.
A lot of the seminarians who've come through our program have talked about the discipline of the seminary. The prayer life, the liturgical life, the community life, that of course you wouldn't necessarily have had any of that before you got there. How are you adjusting to that?
I really love the community aspect. We, as an entire student body, and several of the rector and the vice rector, dean of students, and we pray our morning hours, morning office, and then evening and night prayer, and once a week I think we get together and we pray a rosary, and mass every day. Which thinking back, years ago in high school, I would have, if someone told me I'd have to go to mass every day, I would have been like, oh man, I don't want to do that. But that's a blessing to be able to take part in that every day, to witness that. And so I've really enjoyed the community prayer aspect, and I feel like it holds you accountable as well. Because I've got to go here, I've got to pray, and so and it's community building. It's something that we can do with our brothers, and so I really do enjoy that.
Good. Now I'm going to take you a little bit into the future here, just for a moment, and basically ask you, as you're looking forward and thinking about, God might actually be calling me to the altar. He, in a few years, this might actually be my life. What is it that you feel right now about the priesthood most compels you, most draws you, that this life is going to be satisfying for you and really an answer to your call?
I think just being a pastor to people, and I guess really helping people and showing them, the right direction and kind of living by example. And then I think counseling, that's, when I look forward to, things about the priesthood that I would really enjoy, and get together with my friends and we talk about it. And I think really just the kind of the healing aspect of what the priesthood does for people. I think that's very important, and that's something that I'm very much looking forward to.
Well, that's good. I think one of the important things for seminarians to figure out is that each man brings different gifts. So one might be a great preacher, another one might be great in the confessional, another one might be great working with youth, and that not every priest is going to have the same gifts. And so it's good that you're already beginning to look at yourself and say, you're beginning to discern already some of the areas that you might specialize in, where you might have particular gifts that will help you in the ministry. Because again, the priesthood is so vast, there's so much that life encompasses, that we're not all going to be great at everything. There's going to certainly be some aspects we're far more attracted to than others. And so that's good that you're already beginning to talk about that and to experience that. I really do want to thank you, Caleb, for coming and speaking with us, sharing with us your story.
Thank you for
You're a
having me.
young man. You're just starting your journey. And I think that there are probably young men out there, some who might be watching this show, or parents or grandparents of young men, and they're looking at your story and saying, I know young men like this, young men who are looking for something, who really have the zeal to do something important in their lives, but maybe haven't quite found out yet what it is. And to hear your story and to see how God chose you, that can really be a great blessing to them. So we certainly do want to thank you for sharing your testimony with us today. I want to, as I always do, ask our audience once again to please remember in prayer, certainly our seminarians, all the young men that you were just speaking about, living in community and being such an important part of the ministry of this diocese as they discern their vocations and answer their call to God. Praying for our priests, praying for our bishop, praying for all those who minister here in the diocese, and most of all, praying for young people, that they might say yes, that they might hear the call of the Holy Spirit, that amidst all of the distractions in their lives, they would have the courage to say yes to God, to say yes to His will, which might lead them to some very surprising places. And so we ask for your prayers for them and for all of us, so that as we continue, as we follow Jesus, as we say yes to His call, each one of us might truly know that we are called to serve.